Chers amis auditeurs, bonjour. Dans la ferveur des rencontres d'Arles, j'ai rencontré Dr Matthias Harder. Matthias est le curateur de la Fondation Helmut Newton. Helmut Newton a photographié le pouvoir, le désir, le danger. Son œuvre électrise encore les murs, les esprits et les débats. Mais derrière Helmut, il y avait aussi June, photographe elle aussi. Plus discrète, mais tout aussi précise. Sous le nom d'Alice Springs, elle a construit une œuvre à part entière. À Berlin, la Helmut Newton Foundation conserve les images de l'un, les portraits de l'autre, et le mystère d'un dialogue photographique entre deux regards qui ne faisaient qu'un. Aujourd'hui, j'ai tendu le micro à celui qui veille sur cette mémoire. Une mémoire habitée, une mémoire qui vit. Car rien n'est figé, ni les corps, ni les images, ni la légende. La conversation est en anglais, je vous souhaite une très belle écoute. So, dear Matthias, thank you for taking the time. We just met yesterday here in Arles at les rencontres de la photographie de Arles. Yes. I'm really enjoying meeting you, and Julia already talked about you. So you are the curator of the Helmut Newton Foundation in Berlin, based in Berlin. I have a question. Is it Helmut Newton and Alice Springs, or only Helmut Newton?
It is only Helmut Newton. It was founded by Helmut Newton. Then, unfortunately, he died. Before he could witness the completion of the whole thing. So he didn't see it finally as now. But June became the driving force, to finish everything in his sense and with his ideas. He wrote down some aims of the foundation and just a few. And he said, right, this should be a living institution, not a dead museum. And we try our best. It is exactly that, And just recently, we invited 50 young Berlin designers together with a Berlin salon. And it was really great, to see at one evening 1,300 people coming in, all the fashionistas, and with incredible dresses. Looking at the other dresses, we presented on bus, it's like store dummies within the exhibition, within the whole Museum of Photography. Helmut was so visionary that he found a place in Berlin, his hometown, to create a unique institution. You could compare it just with, let's say, the Henri Cartier-Bresson Foundation in Paris, a building dedicated to one photographer, one monographic idea. And what we are doing in Berlin is, since 2004, as it was inaugurated, we do exhibitions on Helmut Newton, on Alice Springs, of course, and we invite other photographers and sometimes also artists, to our shows. And back to your question, it's not the Alice Springs Foundation, not Julia Newton Foundation.
Yep.
I asked June one day, again, years ago, shall we change it to the Helmut and June Newton Foundation? And she said, no, my work will be there too in the future, but it's all about Helmut. Of course, we have a lot of works, of Helmut, in our archives, but also many of June, Alice Springs. And what we started with, the motto was, keep him alive. He died, and so we wanted to make something around his work, also at home and abroad, that the people don't forget him. And now, after June's death, we say, keep them alive, Yeah. Therefore, we bring also exhibitions of Alice Springs somewhere else. And just recently, there was another exhibition of Alice Springs following our retrospective show, two in Germany, to the other venues in Germany, now Arles, and in the later fall there will be a bigger exhibition of Alice Springs, similar to the one we had in Berlin, to be shown in Bydgoszcz in Poland. There's a so-called vintage photo festival. Last year there was a main photographer, Sarah Moon.
Oh, yeah.
This year will be Alice Springs.
Oh, wow. What's the date?
This is the end of September.
Okay.
You know, the funny thing is that I go parallel with another Helmut Newton exhibition to Tokyo. You know, and my assistant will open the Alice Springs show in Poland. Big lodge.
Great, great. So you're not just curating exhibition, you're curating memories. That's correct. How do you, between Helmut Newton and Alice Springs, you're holding two visions of the world, two ways of looking.
It's absolutely.
How do you manage it?
It's correct. So it's different. But the funny thing is, I mean, if we go back in the time, as Helmut did an apprenticeship with Eva, the famous Jewish Berlin photographer being published in all the important magazines by then, Eva, she was a figure. She worked in three fields. It was fashion photography, portrait photography, and nude photography. And Helmut followed her in this mix of genres. As June came with Helmut to Paris in 1961, you know, she's a trained actress, as we know. And so she had no chance to be this, you know, to become an actress, you know, because of the language barrier. She was not able to speak French in that way that he could act on a stage or for television or whatever. And so therefore she had to find something new, a new role, a new passion. And it happened to be that Helmut was sick in bed, you know, with the flu in 1970. And so, but there was a job to do, and there was an advertisement for Gitan cigarettes. June went there instead of Helmut. So she replaced him. This was the kickstart of her career as a photographer. Already before she took the camera, she took pictures, you know, and reciprocal portraits, you know, of the time in Paris, in Ramatuelle, in southern France, and so on and so on. So she was already taking pictures, but she was not really a photographer. And, you know, later on she found the name Alice Springs and so on. But the funny aspect, the funny point is that she also worked in the three fields, like Eva, like Helmut, portrait, fashion, and nude photography. But she specialized in portrait photography, as we know. And so therefore...
As we can see here, this great exhibition.
Exactly. So
at Galery 8.
Exactly. It's you know, we were focusing on the portraits, but we have also a little bit self-portraits in there. Reciprocal portraits with Helmut, and you know, this beautiful late portrait Helmut took off June, you know, in this colorful dress. And we have one nude, and then we have two pictures, you know, which was actually advertisements, you know. It's for Julia de Bierre. It's about the hair, you know. Actually she took also pictures, fashion pictures for Elle magazine, Depeche Mode, and so on and so on. So the three genres are a little bit shifted. She concentrated on the portraits. Helmut concentrated on the fashion, of course. And if we would count, let's say, if we would say 100% of works of Helmut, it would be, let's say, at least 70-80% of that, which is fashion, 10% of the whole work it's portrait, and 10% it's nude photography. And he became so famous for his nude photography, but he is, of course, firstly, fashion photographer, and June, aka Alice Springs, is of course first of all a portrait photographer.
What does it mean on a personal level for you to carry the memory of such iconic photographers?
For me, it's fantastic. You know, I studied art history before I was taking also pictures. I had my own dark room. You know, I'm passionate for the medium of photography. You know, then I did books, exhibitions, you know, for other institutions, and then Helmut knew that there is a figure like me, you know, doing something like this, and then he asked me, if I would become his curator for the foundation that he was thinking of to found, to establish these moments, these weeks. Of course, I said yes. Of course, it was a big honor, but also a demanding job, because it's a huge legacy. It's a lot of burden, on my shoulders. On the other hand, it's fun.
And it's still burning.
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic to work with this incredible oeuvre. Since 20 years. So I regularly go to the archive and I regularly find something completely new. And so all the pictures published in the magazines. We have also a huge archive of all the magazines. By the way, we have the complete archive. Since June's death, everything went to us. Everything went to Berlin. And so we create an incredible database. So we go into the database if we need some additional information for, let's say, the first publication, in which magazine, by when, who is the model, who is the designer of the dress, and so on and so on. So it's like a huge mosaic. And myself and my little team, we put even more tiny little pieces into this mosaic, or the puzzle. And the picture becomes clearer every day, we're just getting out. The figure of Helmut Newton, the figure of Elmer Springs become more and more visible, let's say. And then we have also some friends like Julia, like Philip Garner, like Violetta Sanchez I met yesterday here in Arles. You could talk to and ask for certain questions, and all this goes into the memory, in this case, it's a kind of an oral history to speak with these kind of people, they spend hours together, months together, and so this is fantastic to learn every day something new about these two iconic figures in photography.
I remember I've seen a huge retrospective of Helmut Newton in Prague and in Vienna, but I don't have the memory of one in France. How do you explain it?
There was a huge exhibition in Paris at the Grand Palais in 2012, I guess, which we organized. And so it was an incredible success with 3,000 people a day. And wow. So then 100 days, we had more than 300,000 visitors. It was really, really big success.
Incredible.
Yes, and it's, but we export, we lend exhibitions also to other cities, of course. And the exhibition you remember, you refer to, was the exhibition for his 80th birthday, which he himself compiled. He got 80. It was the year 2000. He was changing the galleries. He was changing the publishing house. Then Benedict Taschen did this incredible book. He was on the peak of his career. Actually, you can say he was at his peak of at the peak of his career from 1961 onwards. And he stayed there. This is very unusual in the field of photography, that there is a photographer never forgotten, and even now, 20 years after his death, he is not forgotten. He is, he's exhibited by so many different venues, organized by us, of course. And it's, so this is, for us, it's a super cool feeling that we are able to bring his work somewhere else, and and I'm pretty sure there will be another French
also for French perspective, for French people.
Yes,
and tourists, of course.
And what we did as well, besides of it, it's not France, but it's it's close to France, it's Monte Carlo. There we had a big show called Riviera at the Villa Zobel 3 years ago. And so this show is going now to Berlin, to our place. We organized this from Berlin for that place, and especially for that place. And so this was a year after June's death, and we had a corner dedicated with their furniture and so on and so on. Very, very moving. And but this show is going to be shown as well at our foundation this September. And it was a show, also, visited frequently by so many French people, living around, coming from Cannes and Nice and wherever, it's a Montreux. And it was a very, very good success. And I mean, as the title says, Riviera, it was about the French Riviera. He was addicted to this place. He lived there. He loved this, to be there. He could go swimming into the Mediterranean Sea nearly every day, or in Monte Carlo, in the Monte Carlo Beach Club, and so on. There's a Villa La Vigie just around the corner. He could look at, from his balcony to Carl, and he could even say hello, to him. And we have this beautiful photograph of June, also, in Karl Lagerfeld in La Vigie, and with Caroline of Monaco on the side, and her son Andrea, and so everything is somehow connected. And to look at the work of the both of them, you can say clearly one is without the other unthinkable. They are so merged, with the life and their love, of course, and their work. So there's not only this reciprocal and mutual portraits, in this incredible, beautiful book, Us and Them, you see the portraits of Helmut and the portraits of June side by side. They were photographing a person like Deneuve or Karl Lagerfeld or Yves Saint Laurent, and so on. And you see the different aspect, the different angle. Is going back to your question. I mean, how is it to work with these different sides? It's fantastic. That you have these different approaches.
And so there's a dialogue possible between both of us.
Exactly, dialogues. Dialogues is, it's not only the title of my next show. It's a permanent idea. It's also we create dialogues, between Helmut's work and the works of the others, being invited to our place, juxtaposing ideas, juxtaposing a different language, but for us it's so important to contextualize his work and, of course, her work, June's work as well. It's a great idea, I think, to have always a new, fresh sight on Helmut's work, but having also other photographers in mind, or, also visible, just in the next room.
If Helmut Newton were to emerge as a young photographer today, how do you think the world would receive him?
Helmut was, so start with this. He was Jewish, and he had this incredible chutzpah. This is the first clue, to astonish the people, I would say, to astonish himself. Of course, he was, he wanted to astonish himself and June and all the readers, and of course, he went so far that he reached the barrier of provocation, and he wanted to provoke. If he would be here today, I'm 100% sure that he would also provoke today. Then we should think about what would be provocative today. If it would be the same thing in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or would it be something completely different? And
because the world is different now.
The world is super different, yeah, indeed. But he would play around, I'm pretty sure, with the beauty of the women, with the fashion, with nudity, so with the body and so on. If it's naked or dressed, he created this game, naked and dressed, this dress up, dress down, and so on. It's he would create an astonishing work also today. So somebody asked us couple of weeks ago, if we would agree, if a company, let's say, is changing his works with artificial intelligence, with AI. And so we discussed this, but later on we didn't follow this idea. Actually, it's an interesting question. What an AI system would do, out of his work, to make it, let's say, contemporary, to transfer it into contemporary time and so on. But it would be finally against his legacy, and so therefore we decided not to do it. Probably do it one day, and just have a look onto it, how it would look like.
Yeah, because Helmut Newton work have been fully celebrated.
Yes,
and a bit contested.
Yes, that's correct. So, but it was his game, This was his. He was sometimes so provocative or astonishing, and so on. It's that he was. He accepted the voice that there's some people are completely against it. So there was an interview once in the television, and then he said, okay, what the people think about my photography, I don't care at all. The main point is if I like them.
Yeah.
And if you seeing them sitting there, you believe him suddenly, that he really thinks that and not just saying that, and if you're so free in your mind, if you are such a free spirit, then it's, then if you're so fearless, then you could play around with the borders, and he wanted to have this kind of feeling of that there is a boundary, actually it's for some people it would be pressing, or depressing, whatever, and he wanted to feel this border, that he was able to go against it. And so he said, there's just one bad word, in the world, let's say, it's good taste. Imagine.
It's good taste.
Good taste is a bad word. Imagine. It's and so therefore he was always it was always edgy. And so far, he created a really a fantastic work, on this basis of fearlessness. Yeah.
Do you have the feeling that today one image can still truly disturb us? Really, truly disturb us?
I would say so. Think about okay. Today, let's go 20 years ago or 30 years ago. There was, the campaign of Oliviero Toscani, with a killed soldier, or with, there was somebody, a nun and a I don't know, Catholic priest or whatever, they were kissing and so on. This is as well something when you look at this,
for Benetton.
Yeah. For Benetton, indeed, yeah. And it's, if we are here in the field, if we speak about Helmut, we are here in the field of commercial photography. He called himself a gun for hire, self-ironically, it's somebody you can hire, you have to kill somebody else, And it's, he was, and there's the motive of the shooting, it's he shoots with a camera, okay, but it's, but of course a picture could kill somebody, and there are some samples, that he was, so psychological naughty, think about the Le Pen picture, with the two dogs and so on. It was very close to the Adolf Hitler portrait with the sheepdog, and it's so actually it was it was a provocation, of course, And the funny thing is that what I've heard, that Monsieur Le Pen loved that picture, even if it's with a kind of a PR disaster. Anyhow, and it's, but there are some pictures, they are shocking, of course, war pictures, still war pictures, if you're confronted with. And this is reality. We see this in television and so on. it, thinking about that, it's, you should discuss the idea of the authenticity. If a photograph is really authentic, or is it built? Is it Photoshop? Is it made with the help of the artificial intelligence?
It's about the intention of the photography.
Intention, yes, indeed. Yeah. I can believe. I have no good sample that I would say, okay, this would be a very astonishing, disturbing photo, and so on. In Helmut's way, it's a little bit more subtle. He never shocked us. Of course, on the other hand, it was this kind of radical shift he was building into subtly, subconsciously. It's into the fashion industry. And it was kind of radical. This is, or thinking about the quote of Anna Wintour. She said once, if we need to get a stopper in the magazine, we ask Helmut to do it. This picture, a stopper is a picture, where you stop, subconsciously or immediately, whatever. It gets your completely attention placed, let's say, on page 300 in Vogue magazine. It's like a wake-up call, and so he was able to do this, and many other photographers won't. Jürgen Teller and so on, all these followers of Newton, directly or indirectly. They created also some kind of shocking pictures, It's also within the field of fashion. Yeah, there are some samples.
Matthias, I prefer to inform you, you will hate me. Because this question, if you should keep one image, which one would it be?
Okay, I would answer, give me 3 possibilities.
Yeah, please, okay.
I will answer with the 3 main genres. Fashion photography. Of course, it's Rio Brio. 1975 shot in Rio Brio, Yves Saint Laurent dress, a congenial idea of a revolutionary dress in nightly in the streets with a lot of meta levels. Fashion portrait photography. It's first nude photography. I would say Ariel after haircut. It's an incredible, sensitive, sensual picture. It's with the breast, with the hair. It's incredible. And portrait photography, I would say it's the photograph of Catherine Deneuve. And then there's opposite picture in the H&M book, by June. And I would say, in the juxtaposition, it's fantastic because she's playing the Belle du Jour, on one hand with Helmut's picture, and then you have the private person on the other side, Catherine Deneuve, as a private person shot by June. But the Helmut Newton picture is, this opens your mind because it's, who's the director here? Is Helmut the director asking her to pose that way, or is he just accepting the seductive pose of her? And then we go deeply into the idea of portrait photography. About the presentation and the self-representation. Of the sitter. Who's the stronger figure in the play? And this is really interesting. This offers you, look at this picture, this offers you so many possibilities to question the portrait, to question the photograph, and it's especially about this. Who's the person? Of course, we know this person because we know the face, we know the structure, and we immediately see some films of her and so on. It's and on the other hand, it's about as she would play a film, especially it could be a film still, and Helmut was so incredibly deeply inspired by this cinema. And you see it in so many pictures, but in his oeuvre.
How many pictures?
Yeah, how many?
Yeah,
inspired by cinema. Oh, la, la, la. Hundreds, I would say. It's and also in the fashion photography, there's it could be Truffaut, it could be Julie Jim, it could the Menoir Trois. And these symbols. It's a Hitchcock, of course. Later David Lynch, and with his mysterious shots and so on in the 90s. There's a lot of inspiration coming from film, a lot of inspiration, by the way, also from literature, Schnitzler, Zweig, and all these Austrian-German writers, of the early 20th century. And there's a lot going on, also with Freud, psychology, and so on. It's sometimes his pictures are really dark. Sometimes they are very melancholic, especially if you go deeply into his Berlin work. Well, that he had to leave the city as a Jew, 18 years old, lost everything, including the family. And then he came back, and doing very dark pictures, cloudy sky and so on. He loved the Mediterranean, he loved this French light, but he was also attracted by the darkness, in Berlin and so on and so on. So he's an incredible, interesting figure, not only with his photography, but also, he's the wandering Jew, let's say, so going around in the world, in Singapore, Australia, later on in LA, and so on. He was somebody, he loved the life, and it was, it's fantastic to work with this incredible oeuvre.
I trust you, for sure. So my next trip is to Berlin.
Very good, very good. You're very welcome to come to the foundation. It's so we always do something new. I mean, if you are there for the first time, or let's say if you become there for the fifth time, then you would say, "Wow, it's completely different." This is our aim. The wall colors are different. Of course, the exhibitions are super different from one to the other. At the moment, we have a huge Polaroid exhibition with Helmut on the 4th rooms, and in the back room, a group exhibition, and then in the second back room, it's the contemporary photographers dealing with the technique of Polaroid today, and the next show will be Baviera, and also an experiment, let's say, the dialogues. I react with a Newton picture on a big collection, photo collection, from Vienna. And there's pictures, saw paper prints of Maxime Duchamp from 80-50, and react with a photo architectural picture of Helmut onto it, and I create diptychs or dialogues, and there's something in between. There's content-wise a similarity, there's sometimes formally a similarity, or there's no similarity, and you start thinking about this, and it of course comes from the idea of the juxtaposition of the two portraits, within the book, but not such an experimental exhibition have never happened, with the work of Helmut. And I'm looking forward to this, come by in September.
Okay. I sign.
Very good.
Thanks a lot, Matthias.
You're very welcome.
It's a great pleasure.
Yeah, very welcome.
Thanks a lot for this talk.
Very good.
Wish you a good travel in France. Do you stay in France a little bit? Or?
No, I'm just here for the week. I really enjoy it, and I saw some great shows already. So it's going on. And in the afternoon, I see the Yves Saint Laurent show, and there's, I guess, the famous shot of Rio Brûle.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Bye.